Good afternoon. My name is Kendall Gresham, the production coordinator for this Smart Series webinar. Thank you for attending this panel titled, What's Next in Ensuring Workforce Stays Engaged in the New Normal? I will first like to introduce our panelist, Diana Starks, who is the Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion at Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland, along with Miriam Lewis, who is the Chief Inclusion Officer at Principal Financial Group. This panel will be moderated by Pam McIlvaine, who is the CEO of Diversity MBA Media. Please note that the opinions and views expressed during this panel are not a reflection of the companies represented. Without further introduction, I will turn the discussion over to Pam.
Thank you so very much, Kendall. I appreciate all the work that you do in making this series happen. For those of you in the audience, please feel free to engage in the dialogue by asking questions through chat. As you heard, Kendall, our production coordinator, will respond to those. We will pause for those questions as well. I just want to give you a little bit of background on our panelists, just so you know a little bit of the depth in terms of the work that they do in this space and why I felt it was important to hear their voices and what they bring forward. So Miriam Lewis is not only the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at Principal Financial Group, but she is a veteran diversity executive where she has held posts at the Clorox company. And in these roles, she is responsible for global responsibility, designing, leading, and implementing strategies that foster a more inclusive environment in the workplace, increasing employee performance, driving better outcomes for customers, and ultimately to improve the business results. And what's so important about some of the work that Miriam does, she's also leading and cutting edge in what she does in the industry. As the chair of the insurance industries, the life insurance industry's think tank, ACLI, she may talk to you a little bit more about that, but bringing her voice forward within the industry as well. And joining her is Diana Starks, who's the Vice President Chief Diversity Officer, Office of Minority and Women and Inclusion. It's important that we distinguish the titles because she has a government entity there in the Human Resources Department. What I love about what Diana Starks brings forward is very focused and deep expertise, both in the human resource, but she leads the bank's workforce initiatives, diversity and inclusion, education, learning and development, strategic collaboration, along with the colleagues to develop a nationally recognized supplier diversity program. They focus on deepening the bank's efforts. She works with the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland, as you can see here, part of the unique 12 reserves in the nation, very different platform that they have when they're bringing forward the work where they handle the nation's largest capital. And both of these ladies are highly educated and esteemed institutions, and you'll be able to hear a little bit more about that. So before we get into this robust conversation of what's next in ensuring workforce stays engaged in the new normal, I first would like to ask my esteemed panelists, Diana and Miriam, how are you? So Diana, how are you, and how are you staying well in all of this today?
Well, Pam, thank you for this opportunity to join you and Miriam for this discussion. I'm really looking forward to that. I am well. Today is a good day. And the way I stay well is to stay grounded and to continue to read my daily devotion and spending some quiet time so that I can hear what needs to be said to me.
Oh, I like that. I like that. And Miriam, how about you? How are you doing, and how do you stay well?
Yeah, so thank you so much, Pam, for this invitation to join you and Diana on this for this series, and I count it a privilege to be here with you. I'm doing well, and I get to do the work that I love to do. We're doing it in some unprecedented times right now, but I'm well, and I usually find my time to myself and spending time with my family where I typically refresh. And in reading and listening to different podcasts as well that are motivational and inspiring.
Oh, I love that. That's great. And I thank you guys thank you in advance for being here. I walk every day. And just, I'm in Chicago. So, so the weather's not always warm, but it's just great to have that refreshing feeling. And it's so important, right, that we do self-care as we get in there. That's part of I don't want to say a new normal, but that's part of what needs to be normalized, right, in this new normal more than anything is the mental and self-care, what's going on. Okay, let's dive into this conversation. We're talking about what's next in ensuring the workforce stays engaged in the new normal. Well, the first thing I want to say, and feel free, ladies, to respond to what I'm about to say, and that is just this notion of the new normal. And I think it's a sexy term. I think, both the media and corporations are leaning into it. And I'm not saying that we're not approaching in a new normal. Clearly, this pandemic, we want it to normalize. We don't want it to be the new normal. But when you think about the changes, the cyclical nature of corporate America within a decade at a time, how you move from affirmative action to diversity to inclusion, to belonging, to equity, that's a pendulum, a continuum of change that occurs. And so we kind of, if you will, move into a new normal every decade or so with what's going on. And now there truly is, so I state all this to say there truly is a new normal that I definitely want you to talk about in terms of how your workforce is dealing and how you guys are dealing with the remote environment. I do believe that's part of the new normal, but I don't necessarily feel that racism, social injustice that we're dealing with today is a new normal. I think it's something that's heightened, and we don't want that normalized, but we want that addressed. So much for my angst around that. So let me just ask you guys, what are your thoughts when you hear the expression, new normal? I like both of you to address that. So whoever likes to go first. Diana, okay.
Okay. I was looking at Miriam, but I'll go first. So, when I think of the expression new normal, it first came up to me, let me say this, it came up to me in March of 2020 as we moved to our remote work environment. And I was having a conversation with a colleague, and we were talking about, how are people doing and kind of taking a pulse check on that. And I said, I'm really looking at the next. What's next? We are where we are. We've got to sustain the work that we do and sustain the engagement that we have with our team members, and continue to be a high performing organization. So looking at the next, and I like that phrase more so than the new normal, because like you said, we don't want to return to normal. That's just not acceptable to me. And the new normal will become an area where people will start to, I think, feel complacent again. And with everything that's happened in 2020 and even up to today, we need to position ourselves to look further ahead and see what's coming around the corner. And that takes being strategic in our thinking. It takes being observant in what's happening around us, and it takes being agile and interested in what is to come. So that's my response to that, Pam.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I love that we're teasing that apart, this new normal, and I love the next normal, Diana. And I've been thinking about that, and I think it's the next normal, and also I want a better norm. It's just been unacceptable. To your point, what we call the norm before was an abnormal norm, if you will.
Right.
So I am so ready to advance this work of inclusion and diversity to new levels, and not just advance it, but sustain the work itself. And I think that that's what's important for us, and the thought leadership that we get through Diversity MBA. It's remarkable for us as leaders. It keeps us on our cutting edge. with best practices and benchmarks. So I totally agree with you, Diana.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys have taken it. I mean, we have, they're calling it the new normal, and we're now into the next normal, from the abnormal to hopefully land in the better normal. I love it. And you know, and a lot of and we're just gonna do a lesson here, ladies, real quickly. You guys you're throwing out terms, and folks, you know, they don't know, you know, what do I need to hold on to? And you're using words like sustainability, you know, high performing organizations and cultures, you know, advancing the work that needs to be done. And not to, I mean, this is just you and your normal dialogue, but these are the kinds of terms that bring in impact and that are going, that you're actually sustaining. So my next question, I'm going to ask both of you this one again, because I think I know your answers are going to be different. So what's next in ensuring that your workforce stays engaged? I would say, what are some of the top couple things that you see as a priority in keeping your workforce engaged? Miriam, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. So I believe it's important to engage differently in this next norm, we'll call it. And, you know, we've had a lot of many companies, a lot of just really great programs and initiatives, one of them being mentoring programs. In the past, these mentoring programs have been available to, you know, top talent or high potential employees. But I think in this next norm, and we've learned a lot from COVID-19 where things aren't as accessible as they need to be. I think we have an opportunity in corporate Americas to make programs like mentoring accessible to all employees. So we actually launched in July our global mentoring program, and employees can join the program 365 days of the year. And it's up to the employee to want to join the program, and then a mentor will be matched with them based on what the skills and capabilities that they're looking to grow. So I think it's really about accessibility in this new normal and making sure that don't abandon all of the great programs we have. Just be inclusive with the programs, and let's make sure that we have guidelines in place that will allow everyone to thrive and ultimately the company and corporations to grow.
Oh, that's good, Miriam. So open enrollment,
Yes.
accessibility and inclusiveness for mentoring, global mentoring. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And then, you know, we talk a lot about sponsors too, right? And
Yes,
sponsors are extremely important. But one way to get to the sponsorship is through having multiple mentors, and
that's
they
right.
become sponsors for you. So our mentoring program is a 10-month program, and you get a new mentor. But make sure you build those relationships while you're in the mentoring program so that you can have sponsors throughout the organization as well.
And are you finding that, and I definitely want you to do the yes and Diana, but are you finding that people are more open today to engage in mentoring?
Absolutely. I think that people were open before, but it wasn't accessible to them before. So I think that the response rate that we're seeing to the program is just really indicative of the pull for programs like this to advance throughout corporations and to be in that high potential talent. We have to be careful about not to deem someone as, you know, a continuity player. Just give them some opportunities and let's see who that employee can become.
Yes, excellent. So Diana, I'd like for you to definitely respond to what you're doing in, you know, yes, and um, in your organization, engaging your workforce.
Yeah. So yeah, I have a yes, and there are three things that we're doing actually. So we've had a mentoring program. We're continuing that program, and anybody in the organization that wants a mentor can get a mentor. The mentee is responsible for driving the calendar time as well as the agenda topics. So the work is not on the mentor, the work is on the mentee. We are starting to launch a second thing, the mentoring circles. So in addition to one-on-one mentoring, we're going to have some small group mentoring that takes place because we see that there's value in having people connect with one another in those topics, and then be mentored around various aspects that might be needed. We're continuing our sponsorship program, and each individual that's been identified as is needing a sponsor will have an executive leader as a sponsor. So right now I'm sponsoring 2 individuals, and I just got an email yesterday that when we launch our next phase of sponsorship, I probably will get a couple more, and I'm fine with that. I enjoy that work. The third thing that we're doing is preparing our people managers for leading and managing in this next normal. In fact, within the next week or two, there are going to be sessions to talk about that with various groups of people leaders in preparation for our phased in return to the bank. And so we're very excited about that work. Some of it is building upon foundational work that we've been doing, and some of it is going to be new in addition to those things that I've described.
So I'm just thinking of some best practice data. What's very interesting about 88% of our companies in our index have some type of mentoring program. But 78% has formalized the mentoring program, which means that there's metrics aligned with that, and that's so important to do. But we're finding in sponsorships, we only have 56% of the companies that have formal sponsorship programs. So we hope with the movement, accessibility of mentoring, we see more open and accountability of alignment with sponsorships. So I just want to ask you guys to talk a little bit about, you talked about, you call them people managers. Are you referencing the middle managers, the managers?
Yes.
So I wanted to just have you guys address this group in terms of how you are creating, what I want to say, development opportunities for this group, particularly with, some of the spillover of what's happening in the community, so that they can continue to have, an open and a broad lens in terms of what they're seeing. What are you doing to help engage that group within the workforce to stay open and positive? Miriam?
Yeah, Pam, that's probably one of the most important subsets of our community is the middle leaders, because they touch the majority of our population, the majority of our employees. So we're doing a couple of things in this space, and it's really open to all leaders because the needs are the same. But we're making sure that the middle leaders are taking advantage of the programs. So a couple of things. We had unconscious bias education this year, and all of our people managers were enrolled in that program. And it went beyond just awareness around biases, but we really went deep into understanding the different types of biases that are predominant in the workplace, and then also how do you mitigate those biases. We established a common language around those biases, so that, because that's half the battle, right? You're in a conversation, you don't know what to say and how to respond, but now you can have a language around it. Like, is this the similarity bias at play? And we all know what that means at the principal company.
Yeah.
So, or is that the distance bias? And we have a way to talk about it. So we have, I would say, empowered or even emboldened our leaders to call out biases and to really call them out real time. And also with the biases, we're also mitigating them from our practices and from our policies through our talent acquisition, through our talent management spaces. So we think that that's a very powerful tool that we're doing for our middle leaders. The other thing that I really love is we have small group pods, similar to mentoring circles, but it's really focused on diversity and inclusion. And these small groups of leaders meet and connect and talk about, have guided conversations so that they can become more culturally savvy around topics like our D&I strategy, intersectionality, microaggressions, you name it. There's a 12-month program centered on this that is going extremely well. And it started in the business. This isn't a program that was generated through our office. This shows that there is a pull for this type of work, and that leaders really want to be able to meet employees where they are during these very difficult times.
That's excellent. Diane, I'm going to have you comment, then I'm going to come back to you guys, and I want to talk about some of the barriers you might have encountered in establishing this wonderful, that's awesome program.
Mhm.
Okay, Diana.
Yeah, so Pam, we started, we've been in the D&I journey for a long time, but I think that the foundational pieces of it are already established. Even though we have new members joining our organization, we still have opportunities to make them aware of what we're doing, what we've done, what we're doing, and how we want them to connect with us. um, as part of our ongoing development of managers, we have a manager mingle and we have a leadership lounge. So manager mingle is now everything's virtual at this point, is a time where the managers can come together on topics that are relevant not just to their specific business areas, but to the broader organization, and have some discussions about that and break out groups to talk about those things. In the Leadership Lounge, which is a virtual web platform that we're using, they can post information, start discussions at that point to help them as they're continuing the remote work environment. Um, in addition to that, we have we like Miriam, we've had unconscious bias training. We've got mitigating bias training that everybody has gone through over the last 12 months. And we're continuing to offer that session on a quarterly basis for individuals that might have been on leave or just unable to attend the session. And then, of course, our new hires. We want everyone to have that. We had, as part of the events of last year, we started a conversation on race and it's the path forward, where we discussed the incidents of May of 2020. We then moved from that to a discussion that involved individuals that were directly impacted by some of the civil unrest that occurred within our region, that experienced it, and had a discussion around that. We then furthered that discussion by having subsequent discussions and education around becoming a better anti-racist, becoming better anti-racist. And that was an opportunity those were opportunities for everyone to participate, to attend virtually, and to engage in conversations. And various functions within the bank started having small group dialogues as part of launching our internal Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council, bringing people together to talk about the strategy and what that go forward process looks like. That's something that is now in the second month, and we've launched our external Equity and Inclusion Council that will be having its first meeting in May. So a lot of great stuff that's going on. It's just not activity. It's building on the strategy that we have for the organization so that everyone has an opportunity to be their better best in the work that they do, both with the bank and in their communities where they live.
The wraparound.
Yes.
So it really looks, hearing you guys in terms of how your strategy is evolving and how it's, actually illuminating within the workforce and within the community, because people, right, because we go home and we become a part of the community, and we come back to work, that community still comes. It might be in a different way, but it's really good to hear very specifically how and what you guys are doing with all the interconnectivity of the work. But to your point, you said, Diana, it's not just the activity we're doing, we're definitely making sure there's impact with it. But as I mentioned earlier, just briefly, not a lot of times, not a lot of conversation, but it is a reality. I mean, did you guys, are you facing and how are you dealing with, some of the obstacles and barriers that you're confronted with? Miriam, let's start with you.
Yeah, so Pam, in this space, the top 3 barriers are typically, do you have the right tone at the top of your organization? Another one is, do you have the human capital resources you need to do the work that is necessary? And the third one is usually, do you have the budget to do what you need to do. And Diana, you may have a fourth one to add, but those are the three that are most known. And I'm happy to say that we have all three of those big things taken care of. So I like to tell my team and others that I work with at Principal that we have what we need to succeed in this space. Now, so and if when we learn or when we make a misstep, then that's part of the process. But we have the key ingredients to be successful. Now, I would say a barrier that we're seeing is that in this space, as we are working very closely with our cross-functional partners who we need along this walk with us the most, they're learning in this space right now. So it's taken a little bit more time, and we're realizing we have to slow down and so that we can take everyone along with us. And then, we're very busy. Every function, every company, every employee, we're busy. So it's really about competing priorities and making sure that there's really good alignment and support for the work so that you can prevent false starts.
Okay, that's good. Yes, and Diana?
Actually, yes. All of the three things that Miriam mentioned are, phenomenal for us. The president of our Reserve Bank is very, very committed to diversity, equity, inclusion, and opportunity. And she demonstrates that not only in how she leads the organization, not only in how she speaks of the organization and its work, and how she speaks with the organization. So she just launched a reflections from the CEO message that went out in April, and she's in the process of developing her next message, and it'll be a series of communications. So the employees hear a voice as well as anyone that visits our external website. Um, in addition to that, with our racial equity and economic inclusion work that is on our public website, we're continuing to think about the next. How do we get the message to individuals that need to be aware of the content? It's not just a matter of providing charts and graphs and data, but it's also bringing narrative to that to help inform communities so that they can make informed decisions, and then convening the voices that will help us bring about a better economy for the region that we have.
Mhm. So
So
how are, I mean, I'm just gonna push back a little bit. And I think it's great that the cascading of the leadership is felt in both your organizations. But the reality is the majority of companies out there are trying to work through and have some great initiatives for engaging their employees and sustaining them. But when you're talking about this notion of driving diversity, equity, and inclusion into the integration fabric of your systems and your processes to mitigate systemic racism that exists. You have a lot of folks that, the barriers, even with the top three, right? Even with the CEO commitment, with the human capital resources, with the budget, that are pushing back because it's organizational change. And what I love, let me be clear on this. I love the fact that you guys are using racism. I love the fact that you're using mitigating biases. I love the fact that you're creating language that all of us understand, right, about around the new work that you're doing and entering, not just putting here, but you're bringing those words. And listen, watch your words, choose your language, you're bringing that into your culture. So I love that all that's happening because it says all that needs to occur. So it might not be within your organization because it's you guys have been moving and doing it for so long, but many organizations are struggling and are stuck with trying to move to the next with the people in the middle. I mean, the fear of the unknown, how to get even leadership to be more accountable to the change that's going. It's just not happening as well as you guys are laying it out. You are the models, and that's wonderful. But the reality is, folks they're not just jumping on the, the bandwagon here. They have a lot of reservations around it. And I just ask you just to, comment based on your experiences, to that point. And you may see a little bit in your organization, and if you do, or if you did earlier, what are some of the things? What are some of the kinds of messagings and reinforcements that you have to do consistently, always, constantly, every day, every hour, every minute? What accessibility really means and looks like for those folks. Miriam?
I'll start, and Diana, please build on it. But I'll start. Like, I definitely don't want to, not trying to relate to the team that we have 100% support of every leader in our organization of this work, because that's just not the case. So Pam, thank you for pushing back. That's a great push. But I would say that there are more for the work than against the work. And it's with any type of work, any type of new programs that you're rolling out. You have the early adopters and the late adopters. So we definitely have some early adopters and we have some late adopters. But what's important with this work, and Diana, you said it earlier, is to really make sure that it's meaningful work, that you're getting the results of the work and you're showing where you're making progress. Everyone wants to be a part of something that is progressing, that is successful. So I think some may require more change management than others, but it's really about, we talked about inclusion, right? It's really about how do you bring everyone on board. And Diana, you mentioned with your unconscious bias training program, when we went through it the first round, only 80% of our leaders completed it. Now, that was above benchmark, but we weren't satisfied. We weren't content with that number. So we had a relaunch just last month with the program, and then we picked up another 10% of the leaders that completed the program. Now, that's wildly successful as in business. Like, we're at the point of diminishing return at 90%. And this is the way that, and we'll continue, with our diversity and inclusion work here and our strategy, moving that forward. So definitely there is still some more work to do, and it requires, making sure that you have good sustainment practices, but more so than thinking about it from the lens of 90% of my people completed the program. As a leader, we're really talking to our employees about, what did you learn? What bias did you mitigate?
Yeah.
That's what you really want to hear, the outcome of your learnings. So anyone can check a box and say, I sat through the video or I sat through the training program, but that's not enough. So it's how is it showing up in the daily work? And then how's it showing up in our business as well as our people practices?
Yeah. That's
Miriam,
good.
I'm so glad you mentioned that because, being a data organization, a lot of analytical functions within the bank, people will tend to gravitate to the data. What is the data? 90% did this, 100% did that, that's all well and good. But it is not a but, and it's important to understand how they are applying what they learn to what they do every day. Every day. Application is so important. And the awareness that when they are missing a step on application, that they take a pause, the power of the pause to really self-reflect on what they should have done differently and apply that. Learning to me is a lifelong journey. Anybody that thinks that they've learned it all, well, then, they might as well give up life because they're done, right? We're constantly learning, and the environment around us is constantly changing where we can learn more. So I am so glad you mentioned that. Application is truly, truly an integral part of the journey.
So thank you so much. I didn't ask you guys this yesterday, but I think I did warn you. I mean, in your questions, but I think I did warn you that, I might get moved.
You did.
As we're talking here. So the reality though, I just want to definitely make sure I state that is what you did say. A couple things you guys said around really capturing folks that still have obstacles and barriers. There are recognize you're having early adopters. recognizing you're going to have late adopters. Make sure you have the tools available for when they do adopt. And then, as my mentor said to me, and bless the ones that you have to put back into industry to learn some more lessons of life to come back into the workforce, because when we look at what's happening. But you said something really powerful, Diana, around the power of the pause. And it is today. You know, when you think about emotional agility, how to manage what you hear that gives you emotional angst, is being able to internally pause, reflect in 30 seconds before you respond, so that, you know, that reality point comes forward. So thank you, you know, for that comment. So just getting back to the workforce, you know, there's 5 generations in the workforce. One generation, while it's barely hanging on, they call it the traditionalist or the silent generation, who has actually quite a bit of influence if they're left in certain positions in the workforce. But the new generation, let me just say that the Gen Zs, who will be coupled with the millennials, 65% of the workforce within the next 5 years. So that's a reality we need to, if you need, you know, teenagers and young college folks at home to get ready. But that's getting ready to happen. But then the millennials are there's a 3 dimension with that group. There's your 1 to 5, your 6 to 10, and then your 11 and plus. And if you talk to the 11 plus years millennials who are getting ready to become Gen Xers, they're saying, don't even put me in the box with that 1 to 5, right? But the reality, we're defining them there. And so when you think about, you know, of course, they're the illustrious boomers who know it all, they're trending in different ways. But so when you think about the dynamics of now, just not people leaders in the middle, the folks that handle, I call them the first responders, all our support folks that are right there. They're like the first responders and holding it together. And then, of course, your leaders in across the functions, and all these generations that you have to manage too. All of these dimensions you have to manage too. Just ask both of you to speak to a little bit of that part of sustaining the engagement of your existing workforce. I'm going to start with you, Diana, this time.
Yeah, so we looked at, thank you, Pam, for the question. We looked at our generations probably a year and a half ago, just to kind of see where we were in our workforce demographics. And it's not something that that we published, but it was something for us to look at from the standpoint of, we're looking at our next in the DE&I space, and how do we help people again be their better best. You know, you could have one group that's looking at, oh, those people are doing this, and another group is looking at, oh, those people are doing that. So they're looking from left to right. But how about finding opportunities to bring them together to work on cross-functional important work, where they can really get to know a person from the standpoint of, they each have talent to bring to the organization, or they wouldn't be in the organization. So find a way to work with one another, and we give them tools and of course techniques to work through some of the angst they may have. But I think it's so important, just like in the organization that has multiple business functions. You don't want your accounting people to operate in a silo. You don't want your building support services to operate in a silo. You don't want, the research and development department to operate in a silo, or the IT department to operate in a silo. They have to work across the organization with each other, because they are all employees of the organization. So it's not it's just something that we have to keep an eye on. And I'm so happy that in our people and culture department, we're helping with that, breaking down whatever silos that might try to even raise up again that have been broken. It's not the organization, it's the people of the organization. And we want everyone to help the people of the organization be successful.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a good one. Yes, and Miriam?
Yes, and so we define diversity as everything that I am, and importantly, it's everything that I'm not. So it's the things that I'm not that make me dependent on others. And we start from there.
Yes.
So with that said, every single person, I don't care what generation you're in, you are valued, you are respected, you have a role to play and in this work, and you're important to the process. So it's important to find ways to help people to engage each other. But if you start engaging at that human connection level first, like we are human beings and what's our shared mission and our shared goal that we're trying to accomplish, the rest of it becomes a little bit in the rearview mirror, if you will. So I think just really starting there and understanding people are people. When none of us are better than the other person, and we need each other to make it work. So I'm glad to be here, by the way, to represent Gen Z on the panel today.
And
And
I,
no, but seriously, I'm really encouraged by this inclusion work, and it really setting the stage for true inclusion, helping everybody to feel like they're at home or part of the family at work, and setting aside all the dimensions of diversity to make sure that folks can really be themselves, be their authentic self, and be relied on and get that important work, as Diana said. We don't file anymore, but that really, that that work that's not value add, getting that non-value added work out of the way, and help having everyone do work that's meaningful and that they enjoy doing, understanding what their strengths are within the organization and really leveraging those strengths.
yeah, so I like that. And I was thinking when you said I am diversity, I was like, I am diversity. If not me, if not you, then who? We're all in together, right? I
That's
mean,
right. That's
that
right.
so and so thinking about the new normal, the best normal in terms of the workforce. Before I get to the next question, I'm just going to ask real quickly, our production coordinator, Kendall, do we have any questions that came through the chat?
One moment, let me check.
So I'm thinking that in terms of
Pam, we do have a question.
oh, okay. Before I ask the next one, why don't you go ahead and ask that question, Kendall?
The question is: most leaders in the DEI space identify with one of the underrepresented groups formed to support. How can the inclusion conversation enable those who are not a part of the underrepresented to understand who are not part of the underrepresented to understand their critical role as allies and to advocate for their colleagues?
Thank you, Kendall.
Yes, I think one way to do that, and it's an excellent question, is to make sure that you have allies that go across the various dimensions of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we are launching a program around allyship actually this year, to help people to understand what it means to be an ally and how, as an ally, you have to show up and your voice and use the power of your voice in conversations, even where it might need a pause because there is a teachable moment. So, yeah.
Miriam, do you have anything to ask?
Diana covered it very well, and allies have been very, very much so a part of this work, and a lot of the advancement has been because of their voice on this work as well. Because if we just think back 10 years or even longer, the allies were the ones with the seat at the table already. And you have to have a seat at the table in order to have a voice at the table. So I am very much so in the same camp as Diana, with really appreciating the voices of the allies and how they have come along and continue to come along to help advance this work of inclusion. It takes all of us.
It does. And I will add to, when I think of allyship, everyone is thinking this is a heightened awareness because of the Black experience of what's going on in the community. And it's a huge opportunity for, for folks in positions of influence, including white Americans. I say that allyship has been around a long time, because if it wasn't for allyship, right, the Underground Railroad would not have been successful, right? So when we, Civil War, so when we start to think about the notion of allyship and helping to give support and confidence to those that want to now be stronger advocates, it's great to be, open your arms and create that awareness and bring it forward and accelerate it. But it's definitely not a new notion, and it's one we should jump on. So thank you, Maria, for that question. That was very thoughtful. We appreciate that. And I can't believe this, you guys. We're really rolling through this conversation quite quickly. And so the generational aspects of what we just talked about is really important. Just briefly, I'm gonna just jump off and speak a little bit about isolation issues that potentially can occur, and what are you doing about it. And I know Miriam, oh no, Diana, you were talking about organizationals and leaders working in silos and how it's important to try not to do that and do all this cross-functional stuff. But how are you guys handling your remote workforce that potentially could feel isolated? In the courageous conversations that we were leading and a part of, we heard a lot about that. And I would like both of you to, to give the last comments on this before we go move forward.
Yeah, I'll start, and I'll start with, supporting our employees have been our first priority throughout this dual pandemic, I'll say. And so with that, mental health is extremely important as well. So we have encouraged our employees to take advantage of our employee assistance program. In addition to that, we've hosted a few group EAP sessions for grief, for counseling, for coaching, for our employees as well. And we found that those have been well attended. Okay. Aside from the mental health aspect of it, the other thing we've done is we hold courageous conversations. With the courageous conversations on some of the, the hot topics externally that's going on. Most recently, it was on the hate crimes against Asian Americans. And that too was another well-attended event, and employees really placed a high value in understanding the impact that these type situations have on colleagues, as well as how they can become allies and how they can better support one another during these times. The other thing is really encouraging employees to take time off work. Take your personal time and not engage them when they're taking that time off work is extremely important as well. We're more on now than ever because we're working from our home environments and we just don't know how to shut it down. So, that time away from work is extremely important. So those are a few things that we're doing to encourage employees and to support our employees as well.
Thank you. Diana?
Some of the things that we have done and will continue to do. Last year, after the COVID-19 pandemic and we moved to remote working, we had all of our business partners reach out to the employees and just check on them. Yeah, we asked the managers to do it, but we had our HR business partners reach out to employees and just do a wellness check. We offered, similar to Miriam, the webinars, group discussions on wellness. We continue to offer some of the exercise and meditation programs that we had when we were on site. We just took those virtual. We also gave all of our employees the opportunity to have a paid subscription to the Calm app, and we just renewed that subscription for 2021. So all employees that want that access have it. They can download it. We encourage people to take walking meetings just in their neighborhood, just to get outside, especially when the weather is very cooperative. Maybe not today, but just to take meetings outside, to take a break, as you said, Miriam, to take their personal time off. And then for our on-site essential on-site employees, we offer them a premium pay. Didn't matter what shift they were on, they got premium pay, they got free parking, and lunch or breakfast, dinner, depending upon what their shift at the bank is. So, and continuing to look at how we're going to offer wellness, because wellness it's a real issue, and it's also an opportunity. So for employees to know that we are concerned about their wellness, and that we want to support them in any way that we can, to ensure that, again, that they are their better best when they're working.
And that's because that's got to be, the next, right? Is that all of this that's happening has to continue if we're going to keep our employees at the better best, at a high productive level. So this is really important to say that, even with the current administration in office that supports, diversity and inclusion, you guys have to make sure this sustains, beyond that, if you're going to be, this sustainable force in business and in the marketplace. So that's really critical. I will say, just throw out a couple of statistics before I ask the last questions. So when you think about what has happened in terms of the shift within the past couple of years, just 2 years ago, we only had like 38% of companies that were engaging in courageous conversations. And that's because they were just talking about the notion of diversity and inclusion. And then it jumped to 56% of companies. And then last year, 78% of the companies, regardless if they had a robust program or not, were having some sort of listening. And then just the second part of the first part of this year, we did a pulse search, and we're at like 90% of companies are engaging in some type of conversation to listen. But if you haven't created a strategy to ensure sustainability and hearing, right, and executing and doing something about what you're hearing from these listening sessions, then you're definitely setting yourself up to not be successful. So you want to be successful, so it means you got a lot of stuff going on at once, right? There's a lot of stuff going on at one time when you look at the full scale execution. So you have to make sure you have the resources that we talked about. You have to make sure those top barriers are not there. So, ladies, as we move into our last few minutes here, I would like for you guys, I know, can you believe it? It's like, wow. Because there's so much more we could talk about it. I mean, there's just so much more, but I think you gave a really good framework in terms of what folks can look at. And thank you, Miriam, for bringing mental health in when you're talking about, care of employees. So I just want to think about some of the lessons you learned. If you could, each think about 2 or 3, pivotal lessons in this process, because I know you just didn't jump in and do this. But what can we leave our viewing audience with some of the lessons we learned with what's next, being better to ensure your workforce stay engaged? Come on, who wants to go here?
I'll go first, and Diana, you can close us out then. So I would say, I feel like I've just been a student in this work, and it's really great to, just to continue to learn as we go along. So one of the big lessons is around, sustainability, and we talked about it a lot already, but make sure that you don't put any work forward that you can't sustain, because it would be for naught. And I think that's extremely important. The other lesson I've learned, and it's more related to the pandemic that we're in than more so than diversity and inclusion, although it is relevant here, it's really not to rush to certainty. So many times, we get in these uncertain, unprecedented times and we just want to rush our way out of it. And one of the things I've learned in this process is that I control nothing, you know. So with not rushing to certainty, it's a time when we weigh all of our options. It's a time when we don't know what to do and we take time to brainstorm and to collaborate more. So relish that time. And that's something, Pam, I hope that we can take with us once we get outside of this pandemic because it will end. And so I'm excited about the future and what's to come. Thank you for having me, Pam.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the insight. Absolutely. Diana.
Yeah, so thank you, Miriam, for those lessons learned because they are truly gold nuggets for anyone. I don't care where they are in the journey or where they are in their organization. The one thing I would add, and this was, something that was shared with me this morning, and I said, let me reflect on that a second, and then I added a second part. You can't change the ocean or the weather, no matter how hard you try. So it's best to learn how to sail in all conditions. There are things that we can control and there are things that we cannot control. If you're on a sailboat, just learn how to sail in all conditions. And then I added this, when the weather and wind is adverse, take a break. You don't have to conquer every condition.
I wish we were in person. I'd give you a high five.
I'm telling you, you can do it. High five and high five and oops, there we go.
I love that. Send that to me, Diana.
I
I do.
will. I
Actually,
certainly
yeah,
will.
you have to share that with us. I love that, right? You're giving yourself permission. So, and I would just add just what I was saying. Give yourself permission to take a break, to not to know, to be a little bit afraid, to be vulnerable. It is all okay. And the more you are, one of the big lessons I've learned from leaders, the more vulnerable the leaders are, the more trusting the employees are with their safety.
Yeah.
I mean, and I probably don't have to say more than that. So with that, what a wonderful conversation with two leaders that have, been on this journey that brings the passion forward and that shows up for everyone at every dimension. Be part of, whatever level of diversity that you bring forward, regardless of ethnicity. We all bring our differences forward. So, ladies, I thank you so very much for sharing with us, and we look forward to taking your wisdom way out, and we hope people will learn from these nuggets that were shared today. So thank you for your sacrifice of time.
Thank you.
And thank
Thank you,
you,
Pam.
listening
Thank you,
audience.
Miriam. Be
Thank you.
safe, everybody.
Yes, please be safe. And thank you to those of you that gave us your time to participate. Appreciate you. Have a good one.